Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Retail Bakers of America Book Club. I am here with Natasha Pickowicz. She is such a superstar, and we are so lucky to have her here with us today. For those who are not familiar with Natasha, she is a world-class pastry chef that has worked at restaurants in New York City, such as Flora. She has also had 3 James Beard nominations. And is now known also for her pop-up bakery work or bake sales, and this amazing crossover she's created between social justice and baking. Her book is out in April 2023. More Than Cake, 100 Baking Recipes Built for Pleasure and Community. Welcome, Natasha. It's wonderful to have you here with us.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Would you tell us a little bit about your book and kind of your process?
I can tell you a lot about my book. I think telling you a little about my book is actually like what's very difficult for me. But yeah, it's my first cookbook. It's a complete dream come true. I think, I'm a big reader and writer my whole life. So I think I'd always had this sort of fantasy of being able to write a book someday, but I think I never really imagined that, the book that I would write would be a cookbook and that I would be, sharing stories about restaurant life and my family and pastry and social justice, but in this sort of context and framework of a cookbook. So it actually has been such an amazing exercise because, a cookbook is kind of a technical text. It's these are recipes with instructions that people are supposed to follow. So as an author and a chef, I kind of feel like the balance that I'm trying to create is how can I create a technical text that will serve the reader, but also sort of infuse it with my own point of view, my own lived experiences, my own values, the things that I'm passionate about, all of the like texture that can make books a pleasure to read and to look at. So, I kind of feel like, the book, when we're speaking now, the book is not out yet, but so I don't really know, like, how is it going to do? How are people going to react? It just lives in my head right now, but I feel like I was looking through it the other day and I just thought to myself, like, this is the book that I wanted to make. And if that's like all that comes out of this, I feel like that is a huge privilege and a gift. And kind of the most that I can hope for is that, in tandem with my publisher, like we really made the book that I wanted to make. So that in of itself feels like the dream has already come true.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful kind of description of what you want out of a cookbook because it's a manual right on how to do something, but you also want it to be a pleasure to read as well as a text, as something literary.
Yeah, exactly. And, that's such a fine balance to, I think, achieve because, when I was submitting early drafts of my manuscript to my editor, Judy Prey, you know, I think I got so wrapped up in sort of the storytelling aspect of it and talking about myself that Judy was really a genius in being like, this book is for your reader. Like, where's the you in all of this? And, so I'm like trying to take the I and the me out of the writing so that it feels inviting and open and inclusive. And she really helped me kind of like see the course and make sure that it is all about the reader first and foremost.
Yeah. I'm going to read a quick quote from your introduction because I think it's going to be very telling of kind of the tone of your book. But you say here, baking makes me a better leader and critical thinker. Baking asks me to work with compassion, kindness, and thrift. Baking brings me closer to my parents, my friends, and my neighbors. Baking is more than cake. And I really love this quote because you can tell me a little bit more about the title and where the inspiration came from for your book.
Definitely. I think, a question that I get a lot from people are like, how come you're a pastry chef and not like a savory chef? I mean, I consider myself a chef. I think that when people often are like, how come you're just a pastry chef? And I want to be like, well, that's actually like a a dizzyingly huge category of cuisine and technique. So, but I think pastry tends to get put in this like ghetto of sort of being like secondary to like the fine dining savory chefs and sort of the status within all of that. But obviously I can cook savory side, but I identify as a pastry chef. And but for me, I always gravitated towards pastry specifically for a reason, because, when you're going to a restaurant and you're ordering a meal, like you don't necessarily think of the dessert as the essential calories that might make up like the nutrition of your day, like the calories of your day. And that's because dessert sort of serves this almost like a symbolic purpose that seems larger than just the calories and the ingredients. And often desserts and pastries and sweets are kind of in service of these larger, affirming, joyful moments, like a wedding cake, a birthday party, a new job, a baby, like all of these ways that we mark achievements, good, happy, sad, everything in between in life. Was finding that they were really kind of, dessert was serving as this like way for people to relate and come together across the table. And so I pursued pastry, not because I necessarily even like making pastry more than savory, but because I wanted to be in charge and sort of curating those moments. So when I say more than cake, I'm like, it is more than putting the cake in your mouth. It's about like the satisfaction you feel as a baker to make something like that. But it's also about the way that something like a cake can be used to bring people together. So I'm just asking people to think sort of beyond the item itself, and instead like the context that it lives in and the world that it lives in as being this huge, beautiful thing that's all about bringing people together.
Are there certain recipes or examples of that personally in the book that you want to bring forward?
Well, I really tried. I mean, I have like you mentioned like the bake sales that I've done. I have like a little essay on, how to bake sale. And I was also wanted to be really mindful about, recipes that I thought would work in a context like a bake sale, for example. I mean, there are no recipes in the book that are like, chocolate cake in a mug for one, or like a cookie for one, because I don't bake just for me. I bake for other people. So the recipes, the yields kind of like reflect that, I feel. And I also wanted and tested recipes that were scalable, that you could, look at the olive oil cake recipe and you could multiply it by 4 and make 2 giant sheet cakes, 4 big 9-inch cakes, for a bake sale, for a community potluck, for an event, whatever. And so I was really like wanted to keep quantity and scale in mind, because people are hopefully going to dive into these recipes and apply them to their own life, and I want them to work in all kinds of situations.
Okay. What are some of your favorite, I know it's a hard question, favorite recipes that you could highlight from the book?
Mm-hmm. I mean, oh my gosh. Well,
That's a tough question.
like it's like I felt like I had to like I fought internally for every single recipe that's in the book, because obviously there were so many things that weren't in the book, and I was like, okay, these are the ones. I've been baking out of the book a lot lately, and that's been really fun to kind of just open the book up, prop it against my table, and just like follow along, kind of surreal. But I've been loving, obviously I feel like layer cakes are kind of a signature bake for me, and that I have my own set of strategies and philosophies around how I do it. It's very specific. But lately I've been really diving into all of my like single layer cake recipes. I just made the upside down date cake over the weekend. I made the chocolate chicory cake with the glaze a few days before that. It's like these are recipes where I had a dinner party to go to on Thursday night, and I had like an hour and a half. So I just like made this cake with things that I had in my apartment, and I was off to the races. So it's very satisfying also, like that the book can provide like recipes that maybe are 1, 2, 3 day long projects. If you have something really special on the weekend, like a layer cake for an event, But also these kind of like single layer cakes where you're just going over to your friend's house for pizza and you want to bring like a sheet cake and a casserole dish over. Like I have that too. And those are the recipes lately that I've been making a lot, where I want to kind of show off a little bit to my friends, but I just, only have like an hour or something.
Sure. Multi-purpose recipes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So some of your flavor combinations, they're beautiful and unique. And what is your inspiration? What is kind of your process when developing a recipe?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of that is really informed by the time that I spent working in fine dining restaurants too. And I think like that was really a place where I was able to broaden my horizons in terms of developing a palate, where I'm playing around with ingredients that you might not expect to see in a dessert, but I had the chance to like engage with and think about. So I really like kind of presenting you with something classical like a layer cake, but kind of subverting your ideas about what has to be in it by putting something unexpected inside of it. So like one of my favorite layer cake sets in the book is my olive oil cake. And I was really like thinking about these kind of rich, clean, classic Italian flavors, like great olive oil, full fat mascarpone, an Italian buttercream with pistachio paste in it. And the jam, and usually I love putting kind of like, I love building flavor in a cake by adding a flavorful jam or a curd or something like that. But for this cake, I developed a jam with fennel, which is a vegetable, but as a vegetable, it has incredible sweetness to it, kind of black licorice notes, that anise flavor that goes great with pastry, with vanilla, with cream, with sugar. And so I developed this recipe for a fennel jam that, it would be great on a cheese board or with a pork chop, but it's great in a layer cake too. So I think like when I was thinking about these classic things like a layer cake, a chocolate chip cookie, a coffee cake, for me, it's like, how can I bring myself into this by adding like an unexpected twist? And maybe that twist is a technique like toasting your flour, or maybe it's an ingredient like playing around with fennel. But, I love, kind of asking the reader to sort of think beyond what you may consider as appropriate for a baked good and really look at your whole pantry and look at your backyard and your environment. Like I have a garden, live in Brooklyn, but I'm very lucky. I have like a little vegetable garden in my backyard. And that was also like an incredibly inspiring place for me in terms of, recipe developing and like my own cake decorating philosophy, where I was like, well, instead of buying like, roses from the bodega that have been sprayed with pesticides and are expensive to kind of decorate our cakes with, like, why aren't we like going to the grocery store and looking at like little cherry tomatoes on the vine, or, beautiful chicories and lettuces that have like speckles and beautiful like colors of pink to them. Like, I think that there is so much potential in the natural world to bring life to our cakes and our bakes, the beyond kind of like, a more traditional kind of arrangement of flowers or something like that. So these are like the kind of like, like mental exercises I'm asking of the reader, where I'm like, what do you have? Like, what's in your community? What do you have in your pantry that you can like use in an unexpected way?
Draw from local inspiration and your own experiences. Sounds like you almost in some ways you're taking the idea of like a plated dessert and interpreting it into a cake with your
Totally.
flavor profiles.
Exactly.
Is
Yeah.
really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So, I want to go back to this idea of bringing social justice into the fold. I think more than ever, our followers and membership are mostly professional retail bakers, educators. I think more than ever, the bakery and food professionals have become part of the local community and are becoming more involved. What is your recommendation for professional bakers, bakery owners to have more of an impact in their local community?
Yeah, I mean, such a great question, and it's like it really feels like it's at kind of at the core of this work that I do, and because I field a lot of questions like this. I think about it constantly. I don't think I could do the pastry and baking work that I do if I wasn't also bringing this like a charitable community aspect into it. Like, to me, those things are inextricable. Like, I can say, it is such a balance. And I think, like, if you're running a business, if you have a team of bakers, if you're a place that's open every day and you're trying to make ends meet, it is such a balance. And I think that sometimes people get overwhelmed because they're like, well, whatever I can do is like not enough, or it's like not big enough. And I think that's where people get overwhelmed or think that whatever they're doing isn't making a difference. But my whole point of view, my whole perspective is that that's precisely the stuff that does matter, is like these smaller gestures, this more granular community neighborhood work. Like, when I was working in restaurants and bakeries, I was, as an employee, I was often a part of like big kind of gala fundraisers where, a ticket to a seat at the table is like $10,000. And, that stuff is great and obviously very effective at like raising money and awareness around certain causes. But I actually, like, with the bake sale, I wanted to zoom in to, this smaller, like a more inclusive way to get people involved. And that was by creating moments where there was no admission or ticket fee. And if you wanted something to support, you could donate as little as like $5 and still participate. So, like, when I talk to like bakeries and cafes, business owners, like, I'm like, it can be just a small thing. I think that's so meaningful. Like, highlighting a pastry on your menu for the weekend, or, it's all about like forming relationships. Like, when I'm pairing up with nonprofits for bake sales, for example, like, I tend to think very regional and local. So I'm not thinking of like the big nationwide nonprofits that are almost like corporations in the way that they're run and the size of their team. I'm thinking like, what are those little places in your neighborhood that are serving your community like directly? And I think that maybe it's not as quote unquote big of an impact, but if you're just thinking about the footprint of your neighborhood, a mile radius, like, what are the things that are needed in your neighborhood? Like, maybe there's like a little community fridge that's like a few blocks away from you, or like, if you're a business owner and you have like, yeah, a reach-in fridge that you don't need anymore, like, there's a way to use those things, like with a food pantry or with like another, kitchen. So I think, like, education is such a big part of that too. Like, there's a way to involve your community and, spread your love of pastry that maybe isn't through sales, but is through like creating a community moment through a workshop or a demo, or, some kind of like, like networking event that you're bringing people together. So I think, like, whenever people ask me this, I'm always like, well, my exercise is to look inward and be like, what are the skills, resources, facilities that I can offer? And that's different for everyone. So, like, maybe one business owner, their strength is graphic design and website stuff, and that's what they can do. And another person is great with like organizing kitchen demos. And I think it looks different for everyone, but no matter what it is, it can be as small and like little and intimate as you want. And often those are the events that I walk away from being like, wow, that was amazing. Like, I'm moved, I'm energized, I'm motivated. Like, those make me feel as full as like a larger 1,000-person event,
Yeah. You had mentioned right before we started on the call that you're going to incorporate kind of the pop-up bake sale concept in your book tour. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. I pitched this idea to my publisher, Artisan, and they were like, we've never done anything like this before for a book, but we love your enthusiasm and we'll make it work. Because I also wanted to figure out a way to talk about the book while sort of like taking the focus off of me slightly, and like more using the book as a reason to continue to create these like community moments for engagement. So, like, and that's the great thing about the bake sale is like, it's not about just one individual. It's sort of about the energy that's created by like people coming together for this cause. So basically, I'm going on a huge North American tour, which is a dream. And we are going to be sort of bookending the tour with two big charitable bake sales. So one in New York, that will be the weekend of April 14th. It'll be Sunday, April 16th. And then we're going to do a big bake sale in LA, the weekend of May 20th. So my idea for that was just like, I'm really reaching out to my favorite cookbook authors, chefs, restaurant owners, recipe developers, food stylists, like a really diverse, eclectic, fun mix of people to come together. And, you know, the book release is the reason for the timing of it. But like, this is something that I would just definitely be doing anyway. But it feels really special that like I'm able to bring this kind of event into like my book tour, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone should go check out Natasha's book, More Than Cake. We wish you the best of luck on your book tour. For more events and happenings with the Retail Bakers of America, go to retailbakersofamerica.org and check out our events tab. And thank you very much, Natasha.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.